Is your mic on? I'm not getting yours. There we go. Okay. All right, I'll do roll call. Councilmember Julio Martinez. I don't see him on here. Councilmember David Fenn.
Yes, I'm here. Nicole, we're hearing a lot of noise come through. I think it's coming from Barry.
Is it?
It was earlier. I'm not sure what's going on now. It actually got quiet finally.
Yeah, because I'm not lit up until I talk. I'm watching my screen. I don't know.
All right. I think we're good now.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. Treasurer Barry Janetti.
Present.
Chair Thomas Lemasters.
Present.
Vice Chair Steve Cooley.
Present.
Member Frank Parks said he would be absent this evening. Member Keith Bacon. Alternate member David Vanderpool.
Here.
Alternate member Damian Butler.
Present.
Thank you.
All right. We'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Chair Steve Cooley.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
I have none.
Hearing none, do we have approval for the agenda? There's no objection.
approve the agenda.
Motion by Vice Chair Cooley. Is there a second?
I'll second that. It's Councilmember Fenn.
Second by Councilmember Fenn. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez.
I am here now. Yes.
Councilmember Fenn.
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti.
Sorry about that. Yes.
Thank you. Chairman Lemasters.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooley.
Yes.
And Member Bacon. Oh, he's not here this evening. Okay.
Motion carries. Are there any conflict of interest disclosures to be made? There appear to be none. Move into the public comment period. In response to Riverside County currently being in the orange tier, which allows for indoor gathering with modifications, this meeting will be open to the public and conducted in a virtual format to be inclusive of all participation preferences. Public comment participation is encouraged by emailing any comments to the city clerk's office or by calling in using the phone number provided on the front of the agenda. There is a 3-minute limit on public comments. There will be no sharing or passing of time to another person. Note that state law prohibits the committee from discussing or taking actions brought up by your comments. Do we have any public comments?
I have no written requests. Jeff, do we have anyone on the line?
No, there's no one on the line.
Thank you. Moving on to the action items. Number 1, approval of minutes. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
Motion by Treasurer
March.
Janetti.
I'll second.
Second by Vice Chair Cooley. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez.
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn.
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti.
Yes.
Chairman Lemasters.
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooley.
Yes.
And that's it.
Motion carries. Item number 2, fiscal year 2021 general fund and wastewater fund budget to actual through March 2021. Staff report, please, from Finance Director Jeff Mullenkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. I'll take you through the results through March. So now we're 3/4 of the way through the year. We're trending pretty good, pretty close to where we were last month. Our taxes are still, I'm on the general fund, I'll start with that. So if you want to follow me with that. We're still trending pretty good on the revenues. We're actually a little above what we brought to council actually only a month or so ago on the budget adjustments. At a total of 23.675 million is the current estimate. With again getting good sales tax returns, and we're doing good on property tax all the way through. We're doing pretty well. One of the bigger jumps up we talked about with council is our VLF, which is the motor vehicle in lieu, which kind of runs with property tax, but it's actually running a bit higher, and we're seeing a nice kick up there as well. Permitting on the development related activity, we're trending again fairly close to where we were last month. We're seeing our permitting activity a little bit less than what we had budgeted for, but both of those, the gas tax we're tracking actually at budget because we budgeted to a number we knew, and then we're tracking pretty close actually on the CFD, so we should be able to bring in all of that money. Moving down, so bottom line is we have revenues at about 36.9 million, and that's trending very close to our budgeted number. When I looked at the expenses, we're still trending to have a decent amount of savings in the personnel, even though those costs have picked up a bit. We've added some new positions. Mid-year, we added some of the frozen positions were added in. And so we're starting to see some of that start to pick up a little bit on the spending. Still, it's looking like we're going to have about $1 million or somewhere in that range in the personnel savings overall. On operating costs, we're again trending to have probably expenditures a little bit over 13 million overall. Budget is about 13, almost million in the overall operating costs. So, you know, we're probably between operating and personnel, probably $1.7 million, $1.8 million in savings, somewhere in that range. And that's a little bit more than past years. It's a little bit above what maybe our savings has been, but not too far out of line. You'll see that we have expenditures that are higher than other years, and the budget is bigger than what you've seen on the equipment and the vehicles. That's due to the fact that the city council recently authorized some additional spending in March, essentially a one-time allocation of general funds, and that's where you see that increase in the budget up to the 955. And we're hoping to get that spent before the end of the year. Sometimes vehicles can be a little tricky to get the money spent because you got to order things and whatnot. But I'm hearing pretty good things about they're going to be able to get it spent. They were ready on police to move right away. As you know, the city council got approved the budget, and then one of the next items was the actual police vehicle contract. One thing I want to stress to you is the transfers. I have some work to do on this. So you're seeing 1.2 million in transfers. And I talk about the March 2021 adjustments, but I don't have all of the adjustments that were done in March 21 in here. And so I want to caveat there that while you're seeing the surplus, which you saw last month at $4 million, and I'm saying 2.5 to 3 million, that incorporates part of the transfers of one-time allocation of your operating surplus is still in that $4 million range. So that's a caveat I wanted to make. It's not showing it here because we've got some of those transfers booked out of the general fund. We're going to get the rest booked in the next month. You'll see it. And it will look as though your general fund on an overall cash basis is going to be fairly flat for this year. That's because the council has allocated out resources. But on an operating basis, we'll break it out so you can see the operating surplus and then expenditures of one-time funds. I didn't do that properly on this report. We'll get it corrected for the next one. Bottom line for you is you're looking at a surplus from operating activities in the range of $4 million. It might be a little lower than that with some of the vehicles and stuff that have been allocated, but it's going to be pretty close in that range. And then you'll see on the next report, the allocation of the one-time funds that the council authorized as essentially a separate line item so that you can see the ultimate cash impact on the general fund separate from your operating results. And I apologize for not doing that on this go around. So with that, that's the general fund. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Director Molenkamp. Are there any public comments before we move to committee questions?
I have no written comments. Jeff, do we have anyone on the line?
There's no one on the line.
All right, we're open for questions from the committee. Vice Chair
Mr.
Cooley.
Chair,
Recognize Vice
I have a
Chair
question.
Cooley initially.
Jeff, so what you're saying right now is you're looking at approximately a $4 million surplus in our operating budget. Did you, in that budget? Even though it doesn't show it today, there's some adjustments, transfers that'll make it come about 4 million.
Yeah, that's correct. And so from just a pure operating standpoint, your revenues versus your operating expenditures, including the recently budgeted expenses for equipment and vehicles, I think it's going to become near $4 million as far as your surplus.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Cooley.
Okay. I'm seeing a much larger year-to-date on utilities than was budgeted. Can you explain that? I would think of utilities as being pretty level and would expect with the buildings not being utilized as much that we shouldn't be seeing higher than budgeted.
Yeah, we're seeing some of this is actually, we're seeing it in a couple of different areas. Some of it is actually in facilities, but some of it's actually in the streets program and stuff, the utilities we manage there. And so I think I'll have to look into exactly where the specific areas are, but we're seeing it in a few different pockets where the utilities are a little bit higher. It might have been that we actually were, budgeting a little bit off on that. If you look at it, we are trending a little higher than prior years. That 1.3 million versus the prior 2 years. Now this is fairly linear. This one here, there's not a lot of ups and downs. I mean, so if you look at prior years and see how we're trending, we are trending a little bit above prior years. We might not have adjusted the budget quite enough on that one. As far as the facilities being closed and those utilities being down, I can't speak to that part directly, but I can do a little bit of exploration and see if we'll get back to you on that.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments or questions for Director Mullenkamp? Hearing none, is there a motion to receive and file the report?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could, I'll go through the wastewater first for you, and
yes.
then maybe we take it together if that's okay.
Absolutely, please.
So I'll be brief on this. There's not a lot of changes from the last time around. If you pull up your wastewater summary report, we're still look like we're tracking to about a $10.7 million in our primary revenue, which is the sewer fees. So that's slightly under budget, but it's the last two payments might come in a little bit bigger, and that we might bridge that gap. But right now, if I did it more of a linear trend line, we're trending at about 10.7. When I look at the salaries and the other personnel costs, we're trending to have some decent sized savings here. We did add some staff in here. We filled some positions. City Council authorized some new positions midway through the year that are now filled, and so we're starting to see an uptick in some of the spending in the personnel category here. But we're still expecting some decent savings that are going to be probably close to 10% of that budget. So we'll see that, which is it's a known number, and transfers to the general fund for overhead support. So we'll be spending all of the transfers will be made. And so that's pretty much what you have there. Still trending well. As you know, we tricked up a little bit. We started off thinking about a surplus in the $300,000 range, and now we're closer between 5 and 6. And depending on the savings we get out of the personnel category, I feel confident in the around 550,000 at this point. And that's my summary on where we are in wastewater right now.
Thank you, Director Mullenkamp. Are there any comments on this section of the presentation from the public?
I have no written comments.
And no one on the line.
All right, are there any questions or comments from the committee on the wastewater fund?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's Councilmember Finn.
Councilmember Fenn.
Jeff, quick question. I may have asked this before, but I don't remember. But in reference to the transfers where you have the debt service payments, if I'm understanding this correctly, if I look at the years 2019 to 2020 with 3.8 million, then at 5.1 million for the next year. We're looking at 5.6 this year. My big question is, do we expect this to continue to increase at kind of a big rate like that? And are there any years that there are balloon payments that we need to save money now for to make that payment in the future?
Yeah, no, the answer to your question is that part of that growth is actually capital project transfers that we have in there. So that not that full growth that you see there isn't all related to debt service. We do have a tick up in the debt service that happens over several years, but it's fairly nominal and there's no balloon payments. But what we do is we do see a little bit of a graduating payment, but it's in the, you know, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 range, you know, annual growth, not huge numbers. And so we're right now with the surplus of being between 500,000 and 600,000 that we may not have to pull in DIF to support it. That'll be a discussion that I'll have with the city manager as to whether how he wants to do that, whether he still wants to pull in some DIF to support it, or whether we can do that. We only budgeted, I think, about $280,000 this year in DIF support, which, you know, development impact fees. And we're trending, so we might not even need to make that transfer over. So, but the answer to your question is no balloon payments and no significant increases in debt service.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
I have a quick question, Director Molenkamp, on the savings that we're seeing in the personnel services that you're projecting compared to budget. Is that a result of, are we below budgeted staff count at this point, or there's some other root cause for the savings?
So I think there's we did have some vacancies earlier in the year that are contributing to some of those savings. As you know, we had been, you know, we had some gaps in our hiring at one point in time or another. As far as on the benefits side, we actually budgeted for, and it's something we're seeing as we're preparing for the 22 budget. We budgeted for some increases. Basically, we went from on the health cost side of the equation, from budgeting really high. Basically, we budgeted everybody to get their maximum health benefit and pay the maximum level. Like if you had a family, it would be at the maximum family level. Or we have multiple individuals that either come in with their own insurance from another source, maybe their spouse or something, or if they've been able to decline our insurance, and then our cost is a lot less. Or in other cases, they've coming in, they're taking a cheaper insurance cost. So last year, for fiscal year 21, we built in about a 10% escalator in that because we were trying to start truing things up, but we didn't want to go too far. We're finding out now that we're going to be able to pull that back in 22. So when your benefits, you're seeing a little bit of an inflated health insurance cost in the budget. So that's part of your savings there as well.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Director Molenkamp? Hearing none, is there a motion to receive and file?
Make a motion to receive and file.
Motion by Steve Cooley to receive the report and file. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilmember Martinez. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman Lemasters,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooley,
Yes.
and I apologize, I unintentionally left off before our new member, Member Cesar Marufo.
Yes.
Thank you.
And with that perfect segue, I would like to introduce our newest member. He is our business owner member, Cesar Marufo. And Cesar, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, you
Just
are.
want to make absolutely sure. Thank you. And is there anything you'd like to say in introduction?
Introduction-wise, no, I'm happy to be here, happy to be a part of Beaumont, and I look forward to it all.
Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Item number 3 on the agenda, internal control findings update, presentation by Director Molenkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee. So before you is, I think for the third time now, is kind of updating you on the internal control findings that came out of the last audit. As you know, we had some new findings, and we had some carryover findings from prior audits. And there was an interest in really staying on top of this and making sure that we make progress. And the good news for this report is that we've made good progress, and we're actually getting very close to having these things fully implemented. So I'll walk you through. Now, there's a couple that came off the list because we mentioned last time that we were going to bring them off once they're fully implemented. So you have a redacted list already before you, and you can go back to the list from February and see the whole thing. So what's left is current year finding for personnel action forms. As you recall, this is making sure that we are getting the proper approvals and documented approvals on those. We've been made some really good progress on our administrative services director with the additional staff on payroll that we've been able to getting ready for our automated payroll system. Was able to get all of these forms signed going backwards, and now we have a process to go forward. We're getting the supervisor. Always we had the administrative services director signing these things after we found out about this, but now we've got the supervisor and the employee's signature on all these personnel action forms. And so I believe this is considered fully implemented, at least by myself, because we've got the back work done. We're going to be asking for the money to do that allocation work, hopefully to be done over the summer. And then we will be able to use that not only for any kind of indirect rate, any that we might want to charge against grants, which we may or may not want to do that because we have enough charges that are direct charges against the grants, but also it'd be a very useful process for any kind of fee adjustments that we want to make for the fees that the city charges for services. And that'll be a direct feed into that fee structure. So with that, that's my update on the internal control items that came out of the last audit.
Thank you very much, Director Mullenkamp. First, are there any questions or comments by the public?
I have no written comments. Jeff,
And
do
I've
you
got
have
no
any?
one on the line either.
All right, we're open for committee discussion and questions. Vice Chair Cooley.
Can you explain to me the receipting process for the business licenses? How are those receipts generated? What I'm primarily looking for is there some way of tracking blank receipts?
I'm sorry, you cut out on me. I didn't hear the last part of that.
Is there some way of tracking blank receipts? Are the receipts always generated by the computer system, or do we have another receipt process?
So the receipts are all entered into the HCL system. We have a business license system, and so the receipts are all entered into there. They can be paid in different forms. They can be paid by credit card. They can be paid by by a check, or cash. They can come in different forms, but they all are entered into the HDL licensing system.
Okay, my question
is it's actually the and I'd have to talk to our administrative service director. She's the one that actually runs that system, but I believe that it actually is what kicks out the license. And I know it wasn't another city I was at. So, and actually to get your license and any of the kind of documents that support that have to be generated through HDL. I don't know, maybe the city manager has some direct knowledge of how it's done here, but that's at least my experience on how it works.
Yeah, what I'm trying to determine or ask is, how is that receipt generated? Could someone theoretically walk in, say, I want to pay for my business license, here's my money. How is the receipt generated? Is it a blank form that's filled out and handed to them, or is it generated through the system?
Well, there's two processes. One is new businesses that need to come in and submit an application. The other are letters that are sent out by the city to businesses to update their business license on an annual basis. So that application is submitted. It is then bundled. It's got to go to planning to confirm, that they are in compliance. You cannot get a business license if you have outstanding code issues, up to and including zoning violations, health safety code violations, those types of things. So there's actually a process in place and a review by other departments on these applications. So you really just can't come in and get a permit or submit an application and payment and walk out with the permit after that. You cannot get the permit. It's issued out of another department.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Cooley?
No.
Okay.
Theoretically, could somebody come in and say, I'm opening a new business, I need a business license, a clerk take their money and say, great, you got your business license, it'll be mailed to you in 6 or 10 weeks or whatever, and then the money just disappears. Where are those receipts generated? Not the permit, but just the receipt for cash handed to, or a check or whatever to a clerk. Do we have a receipt book, or is it generated out of the computer system?
Yeah, no, that would be generated out of the system. We don't really use receipt books. We would have a system generated receipt that would go to the individual for that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? Treasurer Janetti.
Yeah, Jeff, the last item that we've been dealing with regarding the overhead cost allocation, how long will it take to clean that up once we get somebody in to examine that for you?
So as far as I was a little back feet. As far as the audit finding is concerned, we still have the decision to make as a city whether we want to apportion the administrative costs to any or all of the grants. That's still a decision you can make. Some of the grants that we've used, like the biggest one was the federal grant for the Potrero interchange. And for that, we had enough costs that took up all of the grant dollars. So we really wouldn't have benefited from doing an indirect or a cost allocation for administrative charges. But there may be some grants in the future where, in fact, it would benefit us, where we can absorb some of the costs of our staff time and whatnot that is done to administer the grant. I think that after the cost allocation is done, we'll have the ability to do that. Now, we can still do it. We can do what's called a de minimis allocation, which is a 10% allocation. We've always had the ability to do that. And so that's not, and you don't need a cost allocation to do that. So you can comply with the audit finding either way. And the city can make a determination not to apply the administrative costs against the grant. It's just that the finding, which, to me, it's not the best finding in the world, because we still, at the end of the day, can make that decision to allocate costs or not allocate costs. It's just more of a business practice decision. But to comply with the audit, once we have cost allocation, then we just need to structurally make that decision on the individual grants. In this case, if it's a federal grant, then the single audit gets involved in it, and that's where the finding comes from.
So you can do it, you don't have to declare one way, you can do it just an automatic 10%, and then on others you can do a more detailed?
Now, once you go down the de minimis path, you have to stay down that path.
Okay.
So that's why we want to do, really, the real value in here, you've not seen me get too excited about this finding, because I really don't think it really impacts the city in a major way. I still like to clear it out and get it done with. But the real value in this cost allocation is a lot more in the rate study that's going to follow from it, the fees and things like that. That's the huge value of the cost allocation. It's just a side value is the ability to deal directly with this audit finding and get it done with.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions or comments from the committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to receive and file?
I make a motion to receive and file.
Motion by Treasurer Janetti. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Fenn. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Martinez,
Yes.
Councilmember Fenn,
Yes.
Treasurer Janetti,
Yes.
Chairman Lemasters,
Yes.
Vice Chair Cooley,
Yes.
and Member Marufo.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to our next item, subcommittee updates. Vice Chair Steve Cooley.
There isn't really anything to update because of COVID and the lack of employees in the building. Primarily ended up just kind of drifting to the side because of the difficulties and the lack of access from the subcommittee to city records. While it's unfortunate that that happened, it's just a cost and a practicality. It was not possible for the subcommittee to come in and check random records. So as the city has rolled back into the building and there's going to be staffing in the buildings, I think that part of it can take off and start running again. I know there were some other subcommittees that were established talking about creating a training on Melrose, what's the proper term, for realtors and homeowners, and the committee member who was doing that has left the committee. So at this point in time, we probably need to decide what the city council would prefer for us to do, and maybe even redefine the subcommittees and whether or not they even need to be.
Okay. That might be something we can bring up then under the future agenda items. And since that is the next item on the agenda, well, first I'll ask, are there any comments from the public on the committee update?
I have no written comments.
And does anyone else on the committee have any comments yet? No comments? Then future agenda items, I think I would go ahead and say that perhaps our next meeting, we might want to put on the agenda to discuss the status of our current subcommittees. And Vice Chair Cooley, you brought up, I believe in the last meeting, the need to add another member of this standing subcommittee. So maybe for a second future agenda item for our next meeting, a nomination to the existing subcommittee.
Correct.
Are there any other comments from the public on future agenda items?
I have no written comments.
I've got no one on the phone, but I see a couple council members would like to speak.
Is that Councilmember Fenn? I saw you
Yes,
raise-
thank you. Jeff, can you bring to the committee a breakdown of our contractual services? I see that the numbers have been increasing quite a bit over the years. And as a council member, I'd like to have a general idea of who we have hired and what are they doing for the city. It can be just if it fits on one page, hey, great, but just generally saying, okay, these are the contractors we're hired, here's the service that they're providing, and what category does it fall under? Is it, is it wastewater? Is it police and fire support? Whatever it might be, but just a general breakdown to show what that total is for each year, so we have a general idea.
Yeah.
In the council, we talked a little bit about contract extensions and that kind of thing, and just having a general idea, so we know what's coming our way, what's it for, and we have a better understanding for it. So if I see it here and through the committee, then it will help me then when it comes to decision time with the council. And I think it'd be a benefit for all of us as well, since it's such a large dollar amount.
Yeah, no, we can definitely provide that. I guess a little bit of follow-up. Are you looking basically to get just the larger vendors, like the biggest dollar amounts? I mean, because we have a long list. We have like 1,000 vendors, so we have a big long.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't think it was that big. So
yeah, it's a pretty long list of vendors. I mean, would you like everybody over a certain dollar threshold, or I mean, what kind of are you looking for?
I would say maybe something if there's, I guess what would your guess is if we were to say, what would 80% of that dollar amount cover in vendors?
Yeah, and I'd have to look at it. Typically, we bring everything over 25,000 to the council. That's our policy. So you've been seeing those, but it's kind of hard to get a feel because they just come at you one at a time. I can get it. We're gonna run a report tomorrow and see what that looks like. But we can certainly run a report for you that would provide, say, a couple of years of data for the different vendors. So that should be easy to do.
Okay, yeah, because I don't want it to be too tedious, but just to get a general idea that, 7
Yeah.
million or so
Yeah.
going out.
Yeah,
I'd
we
like to know
can,
what's going
we
on.
can, we can bring a list to you and we'll start there. And if you want something different, we can modify it from there.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Are there any other requests for future agenda items? Councilmember Martinez.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I agree. I think Vice Chair Cooley makes a great point. I think it is time that we bring it back to the council to get some refreshed ideas. But at the same time, I'd like for our committee to discuss at the next meeting some thoughts from them. As public members, what is it that you're looking for that you would like to do that you think is necessary? And then bring that to the council as well. So not only will council give us their input as what we would like direction for us to do, but also suggestions from the public, from you, to let us know, hey, I think we need to look at this closer, or we'd like to do this, and then let council discuss that to see whether they think that's appropriate or not. So definitely come with those types of ideas at the next meeting as well.
Thank you, sir. Are there any others? Is that
Yeah.
Treasurer Janetti?
Yes, I do. Jeff, I got a request from you. I think I know we've implemented that new credit card system for the city, that we got away from the individual, like the Home Depot and all that. And I've noticed that coming across, and there's a lot of charges coming under one heading. Could you come in and give us a brief on that new credit card, how many people have that credit card, and the process you have monitoring it when I see it come in? I also would like to see the opportunity that maybe more things get put onto the credit card, because we'd only have one invoice to pay rather than maybe 20 other invoices if it all got bundled under the credit card, if there's any advantage to that. But I think everybody needs to understand that versus the way we were charging in the past.
Yeah, no, I can do that. You're looking at the, what we call a cow card system. It's systems used by quite a few different cities here in the state. And it's basically a P card, as a purchasing card. So yeah, I'd be happy to provide an update on that.
Yeah, and I was just concerned with the number of items that would come in under that card, how we, in-house, how it's being approved, that they're being certified, that those charges are legitimate and everything else, because I can't tell when I'm reviewing the warrants, when I see 25, 30 items under there. I just see that they're items and there's a price.
Yeah, no, I'll be happy to walk you through the process and how we do it. We do actually have an internal control structure on that that's similar to the way we would handle, through the typical vendor invoicing process. It's similar but different. So I'll be happy to walk you through it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Janetti. Are there any others? All right, then I'm going to go through these items real quick, Nicole, just to make sure we're both tracking together. So for future agenda items, we're looking at subcommittee statuses. In other words, what are the statuses of the existing subcommittees? The addition of a third member to the standing subcommittee on audit. A contractor's vendor listing from the Director of Finance. Councilmember Martinez has asked that as we're discussing the direction of the committee and the subcommittees, that each member come as members of the public and discuss what we would like to see from the audit committee. And Treasurer Janetti has asked for a report on the use of the credit card for the city.
Yes. Just for clarification, it's a debit card or purchasing
Debit
card.
card. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And refresh my memory on this, or give me a quick tutorial. Do we need to address all of these in the next committee, or do we need to break them up? Is that an option?
Whatever you would wish, between you and the committee and the finance director.
Okay. And is that something that we're open to discuss now, or does that need to be discussed, placed on an agenda and discussed?
The placement of the future agenda items? No, that can be done right now during this item.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I was going to save it for my
Yes.
comments, but I also have a couple items that I'm going to recommend we bring to the committee, so that might bear into the timing on these things.
Yes,
So is it okay if I go ahead and identify those items as well?
please do. Thank you.
So we are right now in the process of finalizing the first draft of the budget that's going to go to City Council next Tuesday on the 20th. And what we'd like to do is bring a summary of that budget to the Finance Committee so you can see where we're going and give I don't want to take hours on it, but I think it'd be good to get an overview of what the budget looks like and maybe some comparative data. And then also I've been working with our investment advisor and they have some modifications that they're recommending to our investment policy that I would like to bring back to the committee prior to taking it to the council. So those are two items that will take a little bit of time with the committee. And so I just wanted to mention those are a little bit more time of the essence, at least from my standpoint. So I would like to see if we can get those on the next agenda and then maybe work that into your discussion.
Thank you very much. So my thoughts are, and please anybody comment on this as well, that since we've got that advice and those comments from the Director of Finance, that maybe our priority then for the next meeting would be looking at that first round budget and the presentation on the investment policy change and perhaps the placing of the third member of that subcommittee, and then the rest of the items moving to a subsequent meeting. Can I ask for thoughts from any of the members of the committee on that? Councilmember Fenn.
Mr. Chair, I agree with that. That's fine. I just like to see my report come out sometime prior to the end of the fiscal year. So I agree with the order that you had mentioned there. I think that prioritizes things and works well.
All right. Thank you. Vice Chair Cooley?
I agree, Mr. Chair. The issue I had was more informative for everybody to understand that process, and it can wait.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Cooley?
Yeah, the only comment I have is it appropriate to find a third member of a subcommittee if the subcommittee ends up changing focus or if we end up not needing a subcommittee?
I think the answer to that would be no.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So I think we need
Yep.
to shift that until after we decide the direction
Yep.
the subcommittees may be taking.
Yep, agreed. So,
Chair, I got a question for Mr. Mullenkamp real quickly.
yes, Councilmember Martinez.
Jeff, did you say that you wanted the Finance Committee to look at the first draft before council did or after council did?
No, I think the timetable would be to take it to council and then provide the committee with the results from that first meeting and the summary data so that, they can weigh in as well. But timetable wise, I kind of wanted to get this to the city council for a first run at it and then bring it to this committee kind of in between the first meeting and the second meeting of council.
Okay, all right. That answers that. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
So do we need a motion and a vote on that divvying up of the agenda items now? No. Okay. Then I think if we can, we'll focus on the next meeting as the director suggested, the first round budget review, the investment policy change, and a discussion on the status and direction of the subcommittees.
I agree.
Thank you very much. With that, before we move on, I just want to check, are there any comments from the public on this?
I've got no one on the phone.
No written comments.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item, meeting review, Treasurer Janetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 points, one on the budget that Jeff reviewed tonight. We look like we're tracking as we've previously looked at with probably about approximately $4 million surplus in the operating general fund and the wastewater of about $550,000. So that's a very positive way to be 9 months into the year. Under our internal controls from the audit, we had 5 items. 2 of them have been successfully completed and Jeff feels confident that they're rolling along. That would be the cash reimbursement segregation of duties and the payroll process segregation of duties. So they're off the chart right now from his perspective. They seem to be doing well. The other three, payroll process, personnel action forms, the signatures are getting there now. You got your employees and the supervisors doing this, and I take it that you want to follow this through at least one more month before you take this one and say that you feel confident. And number two is the business licensing. The process is in effect. Finance is able to actually review the reconciliations. And again, I'm not sure if you said that was completed, Jeff, or you wanted to look at it for a little more.
No, I think, in my opinion, I think we're good on that one.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. And lastly, the one item that we've put off till now because of a lot of other action is the overhead allocation, and that should come in after the budget. We would expect that to be done. It actually, based on what you said, Jeff, is not a real burning issue that we need to handle, but we will handle it after the 21-22 budget is through.
Yeah,
That's what I have, Mr. Chair. Yep.
Thank you, Treasurer Janetti. Are there any comments from the public?
No written comments.
Anyone on the line, Jeff?
no, I'm sorry, yeah, no one on the line, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the Finance Director's comments. Director Mullenkamp.
So yeah, no, we're working very hard on the budget. We're, like, in fact, tomorrow putting the finishing touches on the staff report. So we've been doing a lot of crunching in the numbers. And we're making good progress on things like Cal cards, you know, the P card, and a lot of our internal processes, I think, are getting smoother. You know, so I think finance department's, you know, doing well. We will be looking at, you know, trying to get that investment strategy in play. One of the reasons I wanted to get that to you in May is because there's some investment changes they want to make on the what we can invest in that they want to do before we actually implement the, you know, investment of the portfolio itself. We have set up a relationship with a custodial bank, so that's good. So we're good to go on. As you know, they have to segregate who has custodial powers versus who's doing the investment recommendations, and it's important that we keep those separate, and those relationships are now established. So I think we're good to go on that. I'm excited about that piece. The City Council's made a number of other decisions recently that'll keep us busy going into the summer, into the fall. So there's a number of projects coming up. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Director Mullenkamp. Are there any comments from the public?
No written comments.
Anyone on the phone?
Oh, sorry. No, I keep forgetting my job. No one's on the phone.
No problem. Does the committee have any comments for Director Mullenkamp at this time? Other than a job well done.
Thank you.
All right, with that being done, I'll note that the next regular meeting of the Finance and Audit Committee is scheduled for Monday, May 10th, 2021 at 6 p.m. And I will adjourn this meeting at 6:55 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
See you later. Thank you.
Have a nice evening, everybody.
Thank